Welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode 223, discussing episodes 2 and 3 of Turboranger. And these feel like the actual opening episodes of the series, not being it's the true opening episodes. Basically, yeah, this is a two-parter that basically truly starts off because episode 1's a special. Why they call it episode 1 is a complete mystery to me. Why in the world couldn't just call it simply the Turboranger special is anybody's guess. Because all it is mostly a clip show. This feels like a true beginning. Though, the way this opening feels, like, it feels like basically there's visits for Zyuranger. Because, we have this mysterious force known as 100 Bento Tribe we introduced in the last episode. Though we introduced to about a couple of new characters. There is, what is her name here? Princess Bum German. She actually makes her first appearance in this episode. We see a brief glimpse of her true form, which is a snake. Yeah. And aside from her, there is like no. You probably think, is there any other new character who makes their debut in this very episode? Yes. You get a chance to see Fairy Ceylon. We get a chance to see her voice in this episode and see her in person. And yes, she's an actual fairy. There's like Dr. Danza, who feels like a retread of a different scientist from the series. He feels like the main scientist for for Dynaman. Yeah, it seems like the same exact type of guy. You know, a guy who is sort of a scientist, who is self-employed, and he pretty much brings on the Turborangers, taking on some evil force. So yes, we're using something from Dynaman here. Oh yeah, by the way, the 5 random recruits being high schoolers. The whole thing of being students out of school, that is something from the previous series, Live Man. Though at least it's 5 teenagers this time. Which, when I watched this two-parter, I'm like, this feels a lot of deja vu for me for this two-parter. Namely, for the opening episode of Mighty Power Rangers, you know, an H&E being unsealed thanks to some idiocy by some people. The fact that they're wanting to control Earth, and the fact that their base, which shows up in the next episode, ends up taking basically orbiting Earth, known as the Baltimore Castle, which has their leader, the Emperor, show up in the very next episode. Yeah, it feels a lot like Mighty Morphin. Yeah, it seems like basically the creators of Mighty Morphin must take inspiration from this series as well, because I saw the inspiration in Jetman, obviously, especially since their exterior of their cockpit looks exactly like the one they used for Zyuranger, except that they made some minor changes to it. I would say in the case of the cockpit for this one, which shows up which by the way the Turbo Mecha, which shows up in episode 3, which I should probably show up what the heck thing looks like here. Aside from the fact we have, so basically, how they unveil these people is quite interesting, to say the least. Yes. Like, apparently the monster this episode was somebody who was pre-sealed. Yeah, was pre-sealed. Yeah, it was somebody who was pre-sealed. And I'm like, that's interesting. The first monster who was already there? Interesting. Oh, by the way, he does not go giant size. Next episode, they do that. How they do it is quite interesting. It's like some storm happens, and poof. Actually, no. It's actually what's his name? Dr. Lino. He is responsible for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we also debut of their teacher in episode number 2. Misa, who I'm not going to really mention much about her. Aside from the fact she appears for like one scene, episode 2, she will return to episode 4. Don't worry about that. Oh, by the way, the Turbo Megazord. Excuse me. The Turbo Robo, it's called. Yeah, that's it right there. And by the way, this is 1989. And seeing when this thing is formed, episode 3, it reminds me a lot of the Turbo Megazord. Yes. The cars look like the blue ones don't really change very much. Oh, by the way, the first one of these Zords show up in episode 2 was actually the GT Turbo. Yep, the one the Red Ranger drives, which looked like a giant car. And here is basically what the Zord looks like. It looks like a sports car. That's what it looks like. It looks like a sports car. The other ones are Turbo Truck, which is basically a semi-truck. Turbo Jeep, which looks especially like the same one from. There's also a Buggy. Turbo Wagon, which is simply a minivan. And by the way, here is the cockpit. Now I'm gonna show you the cockpit off, and you're like, wait, that looks kind of similar to what he used in Mighty Morphin, and it kind of does. It looks like pretty much the same exact one. I like these type of cockpits where they're basically all 5 in one. And the way their cockpits are designed, the individual cockpits, it's, well, in the case of like GTs, basically the one used for Red Turbo, it might be a lot of the one used from Mighty Morphin Season 2, where it's very simplistic one. This is the cockpit they use for Turbo, for GT. For truck, it's this. For Jeep, it's all of them pretty much the same. Like, it's the same exact cockpit. I think like the only differences aside from the color. Oh, by the way, why is it when there was always black, it's always purple? Like, a couple of them basically have the thing on the console. Aside from that, there's not much difference between the cockpits. They look virtually the same. Mm-hmm. Yep. So basically, they send the monster out, and of course, at one point, the powers can steal the next episode, thanks to the monster next episode, but they're free. And how they're recruited is quite interesting. Like, they're in class. By the way, the people's names. I should probably reveal their names. Which apparently they all knew each other because they're all classmates. Yeah, last episode I did reveal because they revealed what their real names. We have Riki Hano. He's Red Turbo. Black Turbo is Danchi Yamagaya. Blue Turbo is Black Turbo. Blue Turbo is Yuichi Hanma. Yellow Turbo is Shinosuke Hino. Pink Turbo is Haruna Maruhara. I read a little interesting thing about episode 2 when the explosions happened in the episode. Apparently, the actress with Pink Turbo, she actually went on crutches right after the episode, briefly. Yeah, because she couldn't walk. It was so painful for her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the way, here is Fairy Ceylon, which, aside from the fact she gives us support, she doesn't really do a lot per se. And by the way, she appears in pretty much every single episode except for the opening episode of the series. Now, when I look at the actor, it reminds me a lot of, well, I think it's the same actor who played, yep, it was also the Red Time Ranger's father. Yep, same actor. Except not a mentor, just a recurring character. Yeah. Which is interesting, the fact it's like that. Mm-hmm. By the way, the big boss, he looks like this, and he shows up episode 3. How? We have this great beast gun sealed, which, by the way, they actually don't really... The thing with him is, like, he's like the guardian of the fairies. And he appears just for, well, in person, one episode. That's what the beast looks like. And when I saw this beast, I'm like, it reminded me of that dragon, that dog dragon from Neverending Story. That's what same piece of Lika reminded me of. It's like, basically, I'm getting a little deja vu from this one from the Neverending Story. Yes, I've seen Neverending Story. I've seen part 1. I have not seen part 2. I have seen part 3. Yeah, Neverending Story. Quite possibly one of the greatest movies released in the 1980s. One of the greatest fantasy movies, per se. Yes. And by the way, the two monsters of this episode are Stone Banma and Twisted Banma. Yep. Oh, by the way, in episode 3, the debut of their actual, their motorcycles. Which, of course they would have them. Of course. And here's the thing. They all drive, I think the Red Ranger drives look like a 4-wheeler, but I think everyone else drives basically a motorcycle, which is fine. Generally put since the original Super Sentai series, generally all of them have generally had their own personal vehicle. Except for Jack, who had regular cars. This one basically just had motorcycles, which is fine. I had no issue with the motorcycles. I think it was fine. But they spent a lot of time running. It also basically is two-parter. It's a similar thing they did with the opening two-parter of Live Man. Have a two-parter where it basically continues on the next episode. But at least this one did something Live Man was shocking, the fact that they did this in the opening episodes. They killed off their mentor in episode 2. This one, he's here. He first shows up in episode 2. And from what I read, he's here for the entire series. Yes, which makes this one the first one since Masked Man to have an actual mentor the whole series. You could say Live Man have one, but he was killed very early on. So, there's lots of unsealing here. The Banma Castle, which... Okay, what this thing looks like. Okay. By the way, that's their logo. I know I can't exactly see the logo very well, but yeah, that's the logo. But as for their base, the Banma Castle, that's it. I'm like, that's actually, you're thinking, wait, that looks like a spaceship. But that is the Banma Castle. But it's like, well, like I keep saying, watching this show reminds me not much of Super Sentai. It's like this particular series took a lot of inspiration from Neverending Story because a lot of the visuals remind me of that original movie. With the whole fantasy aspect. Now, how these people... Now, apparently they were sealed 20,000 years by the events of the series. Now, by the way, there's no mention of the previous Super Sentai teams like it was last episode. There's no mention of the previous English agents like it was in the special. Now, in this particular one, how they were sealed thanks to a war where the fairies and humans teamed to take the bomb and they were sealed. And then they were unsealed by pollution. No, seriously. Pollution. Which I think this is the first series to have an anti-pollution message. Which the only series that had this. Actually, there have been 2 of them like this. The next one to be like this, I don't know if it happened 5-man or not. I think the next one they had an anti-pollution message that I could think of is probably Dynaman. That was probably Dynoranger. Dynoranger was the next one I know of that had one. The only other one I can think of that had one that I've watched is Ranger. And that's it. So apparently, documents of living human, he blames, humans advance too far, too quickly. It reminds you, basically, wait, did the Japanese writer for this episode took lines from Q? Which, by the way, that episode aired about 2 years prior to the events of the episode. Or I mentioned, humanity has basically advanced too quickly. It's like they pulled an exact line from that one. I'm not sure why that basically he was quoting Q there, but from my perspective, he quoted Q. Just seems quite odd for him to talk that way in the opening episode. His first appearance, despite the fact next episode he's perfectly fine. Oh, by the way, guess what the Turboranger's base operations is? Dr. Denzi's apartment. Yes, despite the fact it doesn't make an appearance next episode, but that is their base operations for the first 20, for up until episode 27. Because next episode you get an official base. The Turbo base, this is called. Yep. It's a pretty good 2-parter, though I did hear also that apparently the guy who wrote this one, who's been writing for quite a while, he apparently was running ideas this one. Though at least got him at that the 100 Bomber Tribe is interesting. Though, I gotta admit, it feels like basically that he is taking inspiration from a little bit from previous stuff he previously written, but also from Neverending Story. That's how I kind of feel that's what I feel about this one. But time will tell. I have exactly about 27 more episodes left to review for right now before I take a break. Take a break episode 30, and then when I get back, I will finish this up and take an official break from Tokusatsu stuff, because this is the last I'm doing before I go on break, because I've been watching Tokusatsu. I'm back on Tokusatsu for quite a while now, and I kind of feel as though I need a break. For all the Tokusatsu stuff I'm watching, I need like a month or two break to watch something else, which is fine. I need a breather, but at least I'll watch more series. But this is the reason I picked this one to be last before I go on a break, because I really wanted to cap off Super Sentai from the 1980s. That was mainly the reason why I picked this one. And plus, also, this is one I want to get to for the last. I actually watched the first episodes very briefly back in 2016, but I never finished it. I watched this beginning because I was like, oh, interesting. But then I realized I probably should have watched the other series first and then watch this one. But since I had watched all those series, the last one I officially watched from the 80s before I watched this one was Changeman. So I was very much with all of them. Yep. So yes, that's episode review. Next episode is going to be a comic corner, and then I'll be on to. I was thinking I was going to do Eden Zero, but I figured though, do a series that waiting 3 years for a new episode for it, and on my smartphone. Okay, thanks for you. Bye.